Please listen carefully.
All right, so Dave, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do this repeatedly in later episodes. This is really dependent on the audience, but we're going to do a little bit of listener mail. Listener mail. Ooh, yeah, it's like our new feature here. But it's really up to you, the audience. Like whether we get listener mail is entirely up to you. So if it doesn't happen, you know, this may be the one and only episode, like the limited run of one episode where you hear
that one
mail.
time.
The one time we got mail. Yeah, we've got some good. We actually got some nice messages, but this is the first one that really had a. It had a suggestion, kind of pertaining to an episode that we have recently done. And I wanted to cover that. We've done a couple episodes by request before, like we've done one about compressors. I think there was another one we did about signal chain. So this is straight from our listener. This is from Paul Towsley. Paul, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. It may be Tosley, but I believe it's Towsley. So Paul is writing us from Irondequoit, New York. I probably mangled that as well, and I apologize. I'm not from upstate.
Sounded right.
Irondequoit. Does that sound like it might work? Yeah. Anyway, he's from New York. I'm guessing upstate. And Paul writes to us. He says he wrote to us about our episode number 15, which was about the 10 stage behaviors to avoid. Right. Some of the things that you want to get past for to project that professional image on stage. And Paul writes, way to go, guys. I'm sending all my bandmates episode 15 because this one is for everybody, not just the bass player. Cheers, Paul. Yeah, absolutely. We agree. He goes on to say, I've learned these lessons already by doing each one of them, such as life. Yeah, like the great,
right.
That's the great lesson teacher, right?
That's right.
Yeah, you got that right for sure. Paul says, I think an interesting extension of this conversation might be how to behave on stage during sound check, how to interact with the engineer, aka sound guy, to get what you want or need on stage in a mature and polite way. Cheers. Keep up the good work. Paul, thanks for writing in.
Yeah.
And as a result, we love the idea. So yeah, this episode is going to go out to Paul T. I'm Paul Frields.
I'm Dave Guzman.
And this is Practical Bass, where every week we take a topic of interest to you, the working bass player, and we unpack it. We look at its various dimensions and explore it a bit, and also open up the conversation to you, the listeners, to let us know what you think. You can get in touch with us very easily through our website, practicalbass.com. We have a feedback form there. We read everything that comes there. You can also find us on Facebook as well. So feel free to interact with our page on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/practicalbass. You can also find us on Google+. You can find us on Twitter, even on Instagram. So we're not hard to find, and we do want to have a conversation and a relationship with you, our listeners, and hope that you'll get in touch with us. You can subscribe to this podcast using your podcasts app on your iPhone. You can use iTunes on your Mac. You can use Stitcher Radio on any platform or just about any podcatching app, Google Play Music as well on your Android devices, and you'll get a fresh episode delivered weekly to you. You don't have to do anything. They're free, and they just show up, and you can hear me and Dave chatting about stuff, and then hopefully you'll feel like discussing some of those topics with us as time goes by. We also hope that you will relate and pass this podcast on to your friends and colleagues, bass players or not, and they'll let us know what they think as well. So today we have our topic picked out, obviously, by Paul T. So we're gonna discuss a little bit about how you get the most out of your sound check. Dave, what's the one most important thing that you try to remember at sound check?
You know, for me, I think it's just not to just to be very active, right? To not fall into like these sort of like lazy behaviors, and just be fully cognizant of not only my sound, like not just walk up on stage and try to figure out, you know, how does my bass sound, but really like just being an active listener as to like what everybody else sounds like, how you're falling in, so that you're actively participating in within the group and not just in your own little silo. So I feel like a lot of times if you go in with not, with a bit of like laziness toward the activity, it could easily result in, just distractions on stage.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, being present and being mindful.
Right.
It sounds like that's really what you're getting at.
Yeah, that and I know that encompasses a lot, but that's that's kind of where what I see is one of the most important things.
Yeah, I mean, it really is about being involved. And the flip side is, for me, the one most important thing I remember at Soundcheck, I don't know, our listening audience probably varies in age,
right?
But I know when Dave and I were younger, one of the popular cartoons in the daily newspaper back in the days when we read newspapers. Kids, get off my lawn, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
There was this Gary Larson cartoon called The Far Side. And one of my favorite, was always just one panel. And one of my favorites was, you're sitting behind the front of house engineer, right? The sound guy who's at his console. And you see this band playing off in the distance on stage. And they're like, they're getting into it. They're all, playing their instruments and singing and whatnot. And on one side of the soundboard, there's this gigantic knob that says suck. And it's up on like 6 or something like that. So I always remember that cartoon because, the sound guy plays such an important part in your gig. They can easily take your set and completely destroy it. Now, I'm not saying that's what they do or that that's what their mission or something like that. I mean, I'm sure everybody's got some stories about, sound guys that they've run into or whatever. But for the most part, these guys are there to do a job and they're there to do it well. Whether that it's a big house or a small house, they're really trying to do their best. And, what you want to do is forge a good working relationship with that guy because, they can be a great partner in your band sounding as good as they possibly can.
Yeah,
right?
It's true.
So what happens when you have a really good sound check? I mean, what does that look like to you? Like, what does that experience feel like?
Yeah, it's day and night. You could always tell, but when it's, for those really good experiences, I think like the resulting piece, like it always just feels like I can hear everything's super balanced. I'm not trying to overpower, not trying to overplay, and everything, any like small amount of tweaking, I can actually control right on my bass.
Yeah.
And it's minute and it's all right there. It's just like so few distractions.
Yeah.
And that, I think that, it's a lot of communication. It's having like a good communicative line with the sound guy. And, having the proper monitoring that allows everybody to hear what they want to hear, avoiding sort of that battle of, that guy's playing a little bit louder and now I'm going to compete with them, or two other bandmates have that sort of competition and things just get loud and out of hand and it can turn into chaos. So when it's right, you just, you almost feel like you're just, like playing in a living room with your friends.
Yeah. In other words, no one feels like they have, I've got to do this to compensate because I'm not getting something else that I needed.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just nice lines of communication.
Yeah. And, typically, obviously we're talking about the kind of places where you've got a sound guy. That usually means you're going to have some sort of onstage monitoring.
Right.
And getting to the point where you use and understand that is such a big plateau to reach for any band, right? Especially, beginning bands, like when they're, getting to that next level, understanding and using the onstage monitoring as part of your arsenal, like it's part of your tools that you use for a successful show.
Right.
And having a sound guy who can kind of like give you those tools and put them to use, and everything is like hammered and screwed in exactly like it should be. Everything fits really well on stage is
right.
So important.
Yeah. I mean, versus like so many other gigs that we play that are either our own gear that we're bringing on or the beautiful house sound that just sees every single hand
Yeah.
every musician, and you you look at that thing and it's
You show
the
up and
knobs are broken, and
every time you show up, it's like dialed in completely differently. And you're like, oh my goodness, where do we go now?
somebody pushed like one of the like mysterious buttons on the
Right.
on the
right,
PA
exactly.
that like makes it not work. You got to
Yeah.
figure it out.
So, I think the if we want to talk about like great sound checks,
Mhm.
the way I guess that I always experience them or feel like the thing that happens that sets them apart is everyone in the band gets full attention. Like nobody gets shorted. Like you're
Right.
not just the bass player, or you're not just the drummer or just the singer. Like everybody gets a complete walkthrough of what they want.
Right.
And you
Yeah.
know, the sound guy makes sure that everybody is there, right? Everybody's present, paying attention, and and everybody gets the balance that they want, like you said. So when you start playing, you're hearing exactly the mix that you want to.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about changing things, because hey, everything's set, and I know that I'm being heard right. I know that I hear myself right. I'm getting
Yeah.
the feedback that I want, and I'm ready to rock out. The thing that I love nowadays, and I've seen many sound guys nowadays use this to great advantage, is so many of the systems now, like they may have a Midas system,
Mm-hmm.
or a PreSonus system, or any of these systems that have a component that works on a tablet or an
Right.
iPad or something, or even a phone, right? They can literally take it right up to the stage, stand where you're standing, and talk directly to you one-on-one and say, how do you like this? Is this good? Do you want a little more here, a little more there?
Right.
And it's so personal, like that personal touch.
Yep.
Instead of just hearing this voice through the foldback,
Right.
you're actually like sitting there with the guy, and he's like, yeah, it sounds a little crispy to me. And then he dials something in, and you're like, oh, that's fantastic. And not only then, did he fix something, but you learned a little something about how to get that later from somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. And so all of this is why, this conversation that you have and this discussion that you have and the presence that you have on stage is why it's so important. I'm going to call back to the episode 15, is not to noodle. Don't noodle on stage. You
Yeah.
don't do it before the sound check. You definitely don't do it at the sound check, and you shouldn't do it after the sound check either.
Yeah. Just no noodling.
No noodling, period. If you're
Yeah.
thinking about noodling, just don't.
Yeah. There might be that point where you're thinking, I should noodle,
This will be a perfect time to noodle.
and that'll be the perfect time not to noodle.
That's what we're saying. The only good noodling is non-noodling.
No noodling is good noodling.
Never mind. So I'm just going to go way back there. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, the thing about not noodling, I know we're ranking on this, but it's a courtesy. You're being courteous to your bandmates who need their time to be able to hear what they want. This is not to say that you don't touch your instrument, right? The sound guy's going to say, hey, can I get a little bass so we can get this level right? But when he's done, when the level has been established, you stop, right?
Yep.
You play until you're no longer needed to play anymore, and then you stop playing. If he wants you on the mic, you talk into the mic. Usually what you want to do is sing at a comfortable volume
Yep.
for where you normally sing, at a normal, attack distance from the mic, whatever that is. And then, once he's got it, you stop, right? And
Yeah.
that way everybody gets their time and gets their fair share of the experience.
And at the same time, then you're listening to the other people doing their sound checks, so that if you find like, you know what, I really like hearing that person's vocals, like they're a good cue for me, you can ask for their vocals more in your monitor. That's an appropriate time.
Yeah.
Versus like right in the tail end, like,
Yeah.
oh no, wait, I need more of this,
Yeah.
You can catch it then.
Yeah, and I would say, when you're hearing that stuff, what I tend to do is like I'll just make a little mental note, like, okay, there's one thing or two things that I heard that I want.
Right.
Instead of jumping in while that person is getting their mix tune, I usually wait till he's gone around to everybody.
Yep.
Right. And usually at that point, once he's finishing up, I'll catch his attention and say, hey, I heard a couple things during that. Would you mind, I don't want to take too much of your time, but would you mind doing the following one thing or two things for me? Never more than like one or two things, like
Right.
not a laundry list. If it's a laundry list, it means that you weren't paying attention during your actual,
Right.
your actual turn in the sound check. So, I never try and give him more than one or two things. And if I can live without one of them, I'll make it just one, like whatever's the most critical thing.
Yeah.
Hey, I you know what? I realized I could actually use a little more of that vocal here, right? Whatever.
Right.
And that tends to go pretty well. Have you ever had a sound check that went badly? How did that go down?
Yes is the answer. And yeah, I guess, thinking about when there's actually a sound guy operating the gig. Specifically, I can remember one. It was a larger venue. It had just a big open space. The sound booth was like way in the back and enclosed. So it was just this distance. We didn't even get to meet the sound guy, so I didn't get to like build rapport with it. Just sort of like we jumped on, and there was literally no monitor coming back at all.
Oh, wow.
Right. And my drummer stuck behind like I should know what this is called, but the plastic divider.
Oh, like that plexiglass kind of
the wall that separates the drummers from the rest of the band.
Yeah, the sound isolator, so that you're not getting all of the crash, all of the snap or whatever into your ear.
So we weren't getting monitors coming back to us. Neither was the drummer. So the drummer
oh, goodness,
was in a spot where basically he rode the whole gig listening to himself,
hoping he was like,
and we're chasing him because he's the only thing we can hear.
Yeah.
And so we're just following. It's like the blind leading the blind, and it was.
So you don't have any monitors. The guy turns up the volume on like the actual PA or whatever, and all you're hearing is like.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was beautiful.
it was a beautiful thing.
It was very artsy.
Oh my gosh.
And it was and the result is like, all right, so whatever, it's a gig, it comes and goes, but like it it's uncomfortable, and it doesn't represent the band well. And it's a lot of anxiety.
Do you feel like that was one of those things where did you take from that experience anything where like later, we ran into a spot where we didn't have monitors and we're like, okay, well, we're really going to get this guy's attention because we don't want that thing to happen again or whatnot. I mean, was it, did you guys get something out of it like that at least? Like an experience?
Definitely. Yeah. I definitely feel like even though we were asking for it, once it was like time to go, we just, as a group just said, forget it. We'll just do it as, the best we can. We shouldn't have. It would have been really easy just to stop before and say, look, we really need to hear ourselves.
Yeah.
Those things on the floor, those are monitors. They give sound back to us.
And we want it. We want some.
Yeah. We want some. Give us some of this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. What about you? Have you had any nightmare situations?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, so one in particular, I mean, obviously we're leaving all the venue names and,
Sure.
out of this and protecting the guilty. But, so this started with a guitarist that didn't, show up to the sound check when he was supposed to. And it was like an hour and a half before the actual show.
Right.
So, I mean, it was considerably before, but everybody was notified in advance, but he didn't show up, and, it wasn't a real good excuse either, unfortunately, but that's another story. Anyway, the sound guy was actually he was one of those impatient sort of ornery types, like real easily miffed.
Right.
You had to kind of walk on eggshells a little bit.
Right.
I don't like dealing with anybody like that, especially somebody that has a ridiculous amount of control over me.
Yeah.
Like over my future. I definitely don't like that. But, but you have to deal with it. It happens. So he was definitely, one of these, don't screw with me, guys. Like I hold the fate of your gig in my hands.
Right.
So it was interesting because what it seemed like he did is he basically like intentionally screwed up the guitarist's mix. Right. I mean, maybe he just didn't set anything. as a guy who does sound myself, like what I would probably do is dial in something that I thought would be workable, like give you a little bit some kicks so that you're hearing the downbeats and you're with the band or whatnot. You can feel the beat. I'm going to give you some lead vocals so that you know where you are. I'll probably give you a little bit of your guitar back so that you don't have to keep turning up your amp to hear yourself when you're up front. And some bass so that like everything kind of stays together, right? Just but little bits, and then kind of tweak it as we go on or whatever. Check with the guy after the first set or something like that.
Or teach him a lesson.
Yeah, or you could do what this guy did, right? The other road is teach him a lesson. So, I mean, he may just have not done anything. I really don't know. But it seemed pretty bad. Like, it seemed worse than it needed to be. The guitarist had to keep turning up on stage. Like, he couldn't hear himself in the monitors. He asked for monitor and he never really got any.
Right.
And so he just kept turning his amp up on stage. Well, of course, that led to exactly what it shouldn't, which is like now there's a loudness war on stage, right? The guitarist is super loud. The singer is having a hard time hearing himself because the guitar is so loud, right? The even the drummer was hearing like the boominess from the back of the guy's like open back amp, like it's coming back at him, and he's like, oh my gosh,
it's like the runaway train.
Yeah. But we got through it. We played okay, and I mean, I thought, and the funny thing was, it was so ironic. The sound guy came to us afterwards, and he's like, man, I didn't realize you guys were such good players. And I mean, this was not a guy who's going to do that like stony face. Like, he would just tell you, well, you guys sucked. You sounded terrible.
Right.
Like, whose fault was that?
Right.
I mean, if we were playing bad, I guess it's our fault. But, he was like, man, you guys are really great players. But it was weird. It was like not quite an apology. Like, hey, I could have fixed. The other guy was like, yeah, I couldn't really hear my guitar or whatever. I kept asking for it. And he's like, oh, yeah, sorry or whatever. But it was like, sorry, not sorry.
Right.
It was just kind of weird. It was one of those weird things. But yeah, that was so. I mean, I'm sure there's like the audience probably has even worse gigs they can tell us about. I cannot wait if we get listener mail about this one. It's going to be fantastic. Let's just be clear. We're not out here to like slag sound guys, because like as a rule, like we said at the top, these guys they're doing great stuff. A lot of these guys are, they've been doing it for years and years and years. A lot of skill. They bring a lot of experience and really can make or break your gig.
Yeah. Yeah. And to that point, I think it's important. I always try it if there's if it's a gig with a sound guy, to like cut a little extra time in the beginning, like get to know them.
Yeah.
Ask them their name.
Yep.
Like be just like common courtesy. Maybe.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Have just have some casual dialogue, kind of ease into it. So it's, not so frantic. And, when they're up there, like helping, get like the cables hooked up and kind of on stage doing that part of it, just like, create some talk, some small talk, but also like use that time to kind of precurse what, in general, what you're looking for.
And I always say to them directly, like you said, the meet and greet is really important. Like, just, look them in the eye, shake their hand, introduce yourself, tell them your role in the band, ask them how long they've been there, just like, make some small talk. But then I always will say, so I've got, in this case, like I've got my gear here. I don't want to get in your way. I know you've got a job to do. Let me know when it's okay to pull stuff onto stage. I'm ready to go whenever. Right. And if you need any help, I'm here. If you just need an extra pair of hands,
right.
Just like pitching in a little bit. And there's a level where you don't do that anymore, right? Where you go to if you go to a big festival or bigger stage, you can expect everything to be done. You don't show up like waiting to run cables for whoever's there, because they're operating at a level they kind of got it down. They don't really need you.
Yeah, you're just gonna get in the way.
You're the talent. Just do what you're supposed to do, right? But I mean, there's that. I think also learning something about mixing yourself, like learning some stuff about sound yourself, really helps you identify what you need in a mix, right? Yeah. Learning to balance those sounds and like learning to balance what you want to hear, like doing it for your band can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Or even just like learning about EQ, like getting even just like if you have a simple digital audio workstation.
Yep.
On your computer. I mean, you can get them for free nowadays. Like there's a bunch of them. Like I think Reaper is basically free.
Yeah.
Even GarageBand has some stuff like some EQs and stuff. Like
Yeah.
play with those and learn what they do so that you can help identify for a sound guy what you want without, I would say, you don't want to get so prescriptive where, okay, well, I need like 4 more dBs at 2K or something like that. Like that sounds that's like going to the doctor and saying like, well, doctor, I've got, there's an occlusion of my right, my right patella and my knee. And you're probably going to need to look at the synovial sac or blah, blah, blah. And they're like looking at you like,
Yeah.
Don't do my job for me.
Yeah. Eye roll.
As opposed to, hey, the sound's just a little bit crispy. Can we fix that a little? Or it sounds a little boomy to me, like the boominess is a little much or something like that. Like just, finding a way to be less prescriptive about it.
That's right. Yeah.
And, and if you want something, don't be afraid to ask for it, but always ask nicely and try not to butt in to do it. Just
right.
Like any conversation. Right.
Just common manners.
Yeah.
And, just trying to be polite because you're all there for a job.
Yeah. Being a nice person just goes so far. If you're if you're easy to get along with, people will generally like be willing to help you out. It's very rare that you find folks that, when you're nice and polite to them and, you don't bring out, it's very rare that you won't bring out the niceness and the politeness in them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think asking for feedback also from your sound guy or from your bandmates as well. Just, it's that common theme of making sure that there's open communication where you can say, does this sound weird? Am I hearing this right? Just to kind of get that in line. And I know, one of the things that I always make sure, because I've made the mistake in the past, but just like when you're doing your sound check, like get your bass and, if it's your amp that it's running through and it's running through, what is it? So post, you want to make sure that those levels are set kind of even, not too crazy. And that you have some room on your bass, like whatever those, whatever your settings are on your bass that you have, if you do want to kick it in a little bit more, that you have a little bit more, you have the control right there delicately, you don't want to throw everything off, but you're not like mid-set trying to ask them to make adjustments. You should be able to do everything right from there.
Yeah, yeah. Like you want some headroom in the signal that you're sending. You want to be moderate about it, right? Like you don't want to jack up your bass. So, in this part, I'm going to turn my bass up twice as high because the sound guy will be like, what the heck just happened?
Right.
Right. And they're trying to keep the mix sounding good. And suddenly the bass is like overwhelming everything.
Right.
Like they had the mix tweaked perfectly.
Yep.
And now it's twice as loud. Like the bass is twice as loud as it was. And they're struggling because you're messing with things on stage.
Yep.
As opposed to, I have a little room to come up like 10% because my part, I'm playing this cool little solo part here or something like that. And then I'm going to drop it back.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Having the ability to do that, right? You can't expect, unless you got a sound guy who like knows your set or is traveling with you or whatnot, you can't expect them to like, know the parts that you're playing and like bring you up and bring you down or something like that.
That's next level gigging.
Yeah, that's next level gigging. That's next level.
With like the light that hits you at like that one like bass note.
Right. Boing.
Just that one bass note.
People are like, man, that's shiny. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're probably not going to get that. So, you leave yourself a little bit of room and, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
So I think, all those things together can lead to a really good experience, with your sound engineers in most rooms. And, one thing that we didn't say, maybe a last thing to interject is make sure the gear that you bring, make sure that it's in good repair because, otherwise you can cost the sound engineer a lot of work to find out that, say, for example, the output on your rig, like your DI is a wreck or something like that. Like it's fritzing out.
Yeah.
And now you've just cost them time. You say, I have a DI on the back of my amp, and they hook up and suddenly it starts fritzing out.
Right.
And they're thinking, where's that? Is it the input of my board? Is it a cable? They have to trace that whole thing back and figure out where it is. So make sure that your part of the equation is taken care of when you show up. Your stuff should be in good repair.
Yeah, and I think if you're not if you're not normally playing gigs that have this setup where you have a sound guy, and I don't know, like I'm just really concerned about sometimes, like if I've got a bigger gig, I feel like, ooh, I should bring out more stuff, right? Like more pedals or more this.
Yeah.
Like this is like the gig. Just it's not the time to experiment.
No.
Keep it nice and simple. Like, there's going to be enough complications if you don't normally play these types of gigs. It's already a little overwhelming.
Yeah. Don't throw more variables into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So that's a good place to wrap up for today. I wanted to say a special thank you again to our listener Paul Tousley for suggesting this topic and for being such a great listener. He heard our episode 15. I hope the rest of you in the audience have managed to catch a few more of our episodes in Practical Bass, and that you will pass them around to your bass playing friends or your other musician friends for that matter. We're very inclusive here. It's not we are not limiting just to the bass players among you, although we do try and concentrate there, obviously. You can find us on the web at practicalbass.com, and if you have some experiences to share about sound or sound guys that you've run into, experiences that you've had that have been good or bad, we definitely would love to hear from you. You can find the feedback form on practicalbass.com, and that comes straight to our email. We read everything we get. You can also correspond with us directly on Facebook at the Practical Bass page. We are also on Google+. You can find us on Twitter and even Instagram. We really want to have a connection with you guys, the listeners. It means a lot to us when we hear from you guys individually. Just a message that we didn't expect. It's great to hear from you guys and hear the stories that are out there, to know about your interests. So we really hope that you will connect up with us and really help grow that relationship. And again, you can subscribe to the podcast very easily. You can find us on the Podcasts app on your Apple phone, or you can find us on iTunes on your Mac. You can find us on Stitcher Radio, on any platform, Google Play Music on your Android device, or on your computer. And through any of these channels, you can just look for Practical Bass. Just search for Practical Bass. You'll find our black and white PB logo, and hit subscribe, and you'll get a new copy of a fresh episode coming to you every week in and week out. And we hope that we will hear from you soon, and we hope that you are helped by this podcast, that it is helping elevate your gigs and gear to the next level, because that is our business, is making your business as a bass player better. And with that, until next week, I'm Paul Frields.
And I'm Dave Guzman.
And this has been Practical Bass.
Thanks for listening.
We actually sat down, prepared, made some notes.
Yeah. In that 15 minutes from the 7:45 to the 8 p.m.
To the 8 p.m. time when you suited up to come over here.
Then I put on pants.
Bam! Yeah, you like put on pants. Like literally, you jumped out of your house into pants,
right,
into the car.
That's
in
right.
One smooth, fluid motion.
It was very cool. You should have been there.
You are like Batman. That day.